Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me to learn more about thought field therapy. I'm Dr. Marta Cordell. I'm a doctor of naturopathy and a certified thought field therapist. And so I'm going to talk to you this evening about thought field therapy. So first I'm going to share my video so that you can see PowerPoint as we talk through this. So thought field therapy is a wonderful therapy for improving mental wellness. And since April is Mental Wellness Month, we're talking about that this month so that we can help people find better mental wellness. So let's start with, what is thought field therapy? Thought field therapy is something that was developed by a clinical psychologist as an adjunct to the work that he was already doing with his patients. So he kind of discovered this by accident, and then he spent the rest of his life studying and developing it. So it's an easy and effective therapy. It has been scientifically studied and tested and verified over many years, and it's been used all over the globe. In many places like war zones, it was used in Rwanda and also in Bosnia to help with the trauma that was experienced by a lot of those people in those war zones, to very great effect. And it's also quick and painless and non-invasive, and can be done without re-traumatizing the person that's seeking therapy. It's not only applicable for releasing old thought fields that aren't serving us anymore, old patterns, old traumas, phobias, fears, anxieties, things like that, but it's also useful for connecting us to thoughts that we'd like to be having, positive thoughts, uplifting thoughts. So it's a very useful therapy in both directions. So a little bit about the history of thought field therapy. It began in 1980 with Dr. Roger Callahan. That's him and his wife there in the photo. Dr. Callahan was working with a patient named Mary, and she had a very deep fear of water. And there wasn't any particular reason that she knew of for this fear. She hadn't almost drowned or anything like that, but she had a very, very deep fear of water, to the point that she couldn't get in a body of water, not a lake, not a bathtub, not a swimming pool, and actually had difficulty showering. And so he had been working with her for some time. And one day in therapy, she had shared with him that when she thought about this fear, it created a lot of nausea and clenching in the stomach and stomach upset. And he had been actually studying a little bit about acupressure. And he thought, maybe I can help her a little bit with the nausea as we're talking through this. So while they were talking, he had her tap on the stomach meridian point. And so they're talking and she's tapping, and all of a sudden she stops. And she said, it's gone. And he said, oh, it helped with your nausea. She said, no, it's gone. And at the time, he was seeing people in his home, and he had a pool in the backyard. And she jumped up out of the chair and ran out in the backyard and was standing in the pool. And she said, it's gone. And so it actually released her phobia of water. And as it turned out, it was permanent. So he thought, wow, okay, what did I do here? And can I duplicate that? Can that maybe help other people? And so he played with a little bit and he studied it, and he discovered that, no, it wasn't quite that simple. But as he really worked with this therapy, he learned different patterns, different meridian lines, different meridian points that could help with different things. And as I said, he spent the rest of his life developing this and found it a very, very effective therapy with his patients. So many people are familiar with EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique. This is something that's been around for some time, and it was actually an outgrowth of thought field therapy. It was developed by a different therapist for the purpose of being used by the layperson. And so this was something that anyone could use anytime. The patterns are always the same, right? And so you tap in the same pattern and use affirmations and things like that. And sometimes it works very effectively, and sometimes it doesn't. So the difference with thought field therapy is that it was developed for the practitioner. And there are ways that we can determine if there are blockages. So if something's not working well, if it's not actually clearing the thought field, then we actually have different techniques that we can use to help clear those blockages as we go. So it's a little deeper, a little more quickly, and it's a really good way to work with a therapist, especially if you are already working on your mental health and are needing another tool. It is continuously evolving, and it's always propelled by the scientific process, which is theorize, test the theory, you document the results, you see if you can duplicate that, and then you revise the theory from there, right? And so it's always been according to a scientific process. Now, Dr. Callahan has passed at this point, but his wife still continues his work. And it was from Joanne, his wife, that I actually learned thought field therapy. So how does it work? So it's actually, as I said, an acupressure therapy. And so what we're doing is we are working with different meridian points on the body to clear static from the system. So our acupuncture meridians are actually our electrical system. It's like our wiring. And so our electrical impulses run along those pathways. And we are actually electromagnetic beings. We all have an electromagnetic field. And truthfully, it's not that we have an electromagnetic field, we are an electromagnetic field. That's what holds all the atoms together and creates this beautiful organism that we live in. So this actually helps to clear static out of that electrical system, things that may be blocking us from being able to heal, things that may have kind of gotten stuck in the system, and so now just need to be released. And the wonderful thing is that it actually helps to realign our electromagnetic field and make sure that it's running in the right direction. And so it actually reduces the emotional charge around an issue. So it doesn't make us forget what happened, right? What happens in our life is what happens. But it actually allows us to go back to thinking about that issue without the emotional charge. So rather than thinking about something that was perhaps traumatic for us or difficult, challenging, where when we think about that, we have fears and anxieties and worries and negative feelings. This allows us to go think about things and say, oh, yeah, that happened. But now I'm not there, I'm here, right? So it removes that emotional charge. And the way that it does that is by tapping on the different acupuncture meridian lines. So what is a thought field? So a thought field is any obtrusive or negative thought pattern. Could be a traumatic memory. Dr. Callahan called these perturbations, but it can also be any positive thought pattern. So these are thought patterns that perhaps we'd like to align with rather than with the old, not so useful negative thought patterns. And so these are, we all have thoughts and we're all generating thoughts, like thousands and thousands of thoughts per second. And so many of those thoughts are negative. We find that the brain is a problem solver. And so it has a tendency to focus on the negative thoughts because it's a problem solver. So it's focused on the problem. But really, what we'd like to be able to do is focus more on those positive thoughts, because when we focus on the positive thoughts, we actually generate more creativity, and we're able to move out of thinking with our primal brain, our brainstem, right, which is the problem solver and is focused on the negativity, and moving more into our frontal cortex. Our frontal cortex is actually our problem solving brain. This is where we are creative, where we come up with good solutions, where our judgment comes from, our planning, our ability to look down the road and create things that will affect a positive outcome. So being in those positive thought fields actually help to put us back into that thinking brain. So the ways that TFT can help is by clearing those negative thought patterns and thought fields that hold us back and sometimes sabotage our progress. We have a thought and we say, ooh, this is what I'd like to accomplish. And we're excited about it, right? And we want to try something new. And then that primal brain kicks in and goes, but wait, we could fail. Things could go badly, right? And so frequently those negative thought patterns tend to hold us back from doing what we would otherwise really like to do and accomplishing the things in our lives that really will make us happy. And so it also allows us to align with that more constructive focus so that we can actually create what we want in our lives. And so it removes, as I said, the negative charge from a situation. It doesn't remove the situation, right? Life is still what it is. It's still a challenge to live on planet Earth, but it removes that emotional charge from it so that we can actually be rational and logical and make the good decisions. It's actually calming to the central nervous system over time. So if we do this on a regular basis, if we use some of these tools regularly, they can actually help to change the way that we deal with stress. So what a session looks like is that we start with releasing the emotional polarities. So polarity is really important. Because we're electromagnetic beings, we have polarity. And interestingly, we actually have polarity in our hands. And so on the right hand, we have positive, negative, ground. And then on the left hand, we have negative, positive, ground. And that'll be important in a few minutes when we start to talk about some of the tools. So our initial session is an hour long. And this is because we talk a little bit about what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What are the things that you'd like to clear out? What are the things that you'd like to better align with? And then we do some exercises and we do some tapping sequences. And then our follow-up sessions are only half an hour because we already kind of have a path. So we start with releasing the polarity disturbances and making sure that the polarities are aligned properly. We identify what you'd like to work on, and we start with gauging where we're starting from. So what are the emotions that you're dealing with around this issue? Where might you be feeling physical sensations around that when you think about it? And then what are the levels of intensity? I actually only need very minimal information in order to do this therapy. I don't actually have to know what the issue is even, so frequently I find that when people talk through an issue, as we frequently do with talk therapy, which can be really helpful, but also can be very traumatizing if it's a very intense situation. So sometimes it's a whole lot easier if you don't have to go back into that story, if you don't have to go back and tell what happened again and relive that, basically just saying, okay, when I think about this issue, these are the emotions that come up. This is where I'm feeling this physically. And this is the intensity that I'm feeling that. And so we start with that. And so I only really need very minimal information. And then once we kind of have established where we want to go, I lead you through a process of tapping on different points on the meridian lines. And so we start with a sequence that's designed to help release those energies. And then we go through a second tapping sequence. And this is not me tapping on the client. This is me demonstrating and the client tapping on themselves, right? And so this is a very low touch therapy, although sometimes I will use some muscle testing if we've determined that we have blockages, if things aren't moving, if we're finding that it's not being effective, then we can do some muscle testing, which does require some touch. But mostly this is the person tapping on themselves. And so the beautiful thing about that is frequently we can actually do this by Zoom. So we don't necessarily have to be in person in order to do this therapy. So we do the main sequence, and then we do a second sequence that is designed to actually help cement those changes into the brain, right? Because we use the same neural pathways, right? When we develop habits, when we develop coping mechanisms, we use specific neural pathways. And so the purpose of this is to start to develop new neural pathways. And the second sequence, called the 9 gamut, is designed to help cement the new neural pathway into the brain. And so then we check in and see how things have shifted. Are we feeling things at a less of an intensity? Has the physical sensation shifted, right? And then we do a second set of the sequence. And so throughout this process, we check in on the intensity, we check on how things are moving. And so depending on how things are beginning to correct, we may stop and do a little bit of muscle testing. We may use another technique. We may do some different things that will help to more easily release the energies. Once we've kind of gotten the intensity level where we want it, then we do a final sequence. And that final sequence is designed to just release any last little lingering bit. And so it kind of brings everything to a close. All of this is accomplished usually in about a half an hour. And so it's a very quick process as well. So yeah, we talked about this, the actual process. Again, I demonstrate and the client follows along. And this also allows the client to learn this process so that if they need this in between our sessions, they can actually use this for themselves. In fact, I teach a few standalone tools, and we're going to demonstrate a couple of those here in a minute. And those standalone tools are actually really good for using in between sessions to help calm the central nervous system and build resilience. And so yeah, as we walk through this, we check different levels, we make sure that things are moving in the right direction. So thought field therapy itself is built around what we call algorithms. And so what this is are different sequences of tapping. And so each of the meridian lines has many different access points. And there are specific access points that we use on each of the meridian lines in order to access whatever static might be being stored in those meridian lines and help to release that. And so there are some established algorithms that we use for specific things. But then also, as a certified therapist at the intermediate level, I'm also able to create custom algorithms for anything that you might be working on. And also to determine blockages, figure out what might be stopping you from being able to release these things, and correcting for those blockages. So there's a very much deeper way of pursuing this than you would find in the emotional freedom technique. Okay, so let's have just a little bit of fun. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of techniques that are going to be very useful for you, and hopefully you will do these on a regular basis. I recommend doing these twice a day. Ideally, first thing when you wake up in the morning, last thing before you go to bed at night. They can be very, very good to do before you go to sleep because they do calm the central nervous system, and they'll help to put you in a state where you can actually sleep. So, take my glasses off. And so I'll demonstrate as we go, and then also there will be links to instructions so that you'll have instructions to do these going forward. So the first one that I'm going to demonstrate is called the polarity reversal. And so what it does is it helps to get our electromagnetic field flowing in the right direction so that we don't have polarities that are off. Our polarities can be off for a number of different reasons. Things like electromagnetic fields, so our cell phones and all of the electromagnetic fields that are kind of floating around out there right now. Also other people's energies, because of course they have electromagnetic fields as well. And if theirs are a little out of alignment, then they can knock us out of alignment as well. Also things like toxins and a food that you ate that didn't really agree with you, microbial things that are going on in the system. So all of these things can actually knock us out of polarity. So it's a really good idea to do a polarity reversal before we do any of this work, and also just on a regular basis, because it helps to build resilience into that electromagnetic field so that you don't get knocked out of polarity quite so easily. So the first point that we're going to start with, and I usually use 2 fingers because, as I said, our fingers have polarity. And so if we're using 2 fingers, then it's going to be a neutral polarity, right? Now, that said, you can do that with 1 finger, you can do that with 2 fingers, really doesn't matter. You can also do this on either side, doesn't matter. Either way is fine. It's really hard to mess this up. So we'll start with, we're going to be on the outside of the hand, about midway down, and we're going to start by tapping here. And you want to tap hard enough to put some energy into the system, but not hard enough to hurt, right? And generally speaking, we recommend tapping about 15 to 20 times on each point, but sometimes you'll feel like, I feel pretty good here. I kind of want to do this for a minute. So tap until you feel finished, right? That's always a good thing too. There's no hard and fast rules with this. So we start with this point, and then we're going to tap under the nose. And then we tap under the chin. And then we're going to tap on the inside corner of the nail of the middle finger. There are quite a few points that we use that are on the different fingers, right? And so we're always tapping on that inside corner of the nail. Now, if we're tapping on the thumb, we're tapping on the inside corner of the thumbnail, right? But here we're going to use the middle finger. And so we're tapping on that inside corner of the nail. And then we're going to tap on the outside corner of the eye. And finally, We're going to tap on what's called the collarbone point, or in acupuncture, it's known as the K2 point. K27 point. And so the way that you find this is that you have these two little knobs on the collarbone, and you want to go 1 inch down from those little knobs, and you'll find it's kind of a little indentation there. And so we're just going to tap over one of those indentation points. That's our K27 points. And these are important for the next exercise that we're going to be doing as well. And that's all of the polarity reversal. And then we take a deep breath. And that just helps to align the system. So this is really good to do if you feel off. So if you feel kind of clumsy, like you're dropping things or you're tripping over things, or you can't find the words for things, or if you turned left when you meant to go right, right? So a lot of times that's an indicator that your polarities are a little off somewhere. And so it's a good thing to do that polarity reversal. So I do recommend doing these twice a day, but then also in the moment, whenever you need it, they're very good tools for that as well. So that's the polarity reversal. The second tool that I want to teach you is the collarbone breathing. And so the collarbone breathing, its purpose is to calm the central nervous system. Frequently, with all the stress that we have all the time, right? We're all dealing with a lot of stress. Life is just kind of flying at us. Life on planet Earth is a challenge, right? And so this is a really good way to bring that set point down. A lot of times with all of the stress and all of the worry and all the anxiety, our stress levels get to the point where our central nervous system is set too high. And then any little thing causes stress. And so what we want to do is start to bring that set point back down to its normal range. And so then we have a lot more resilience and things don't quite bother us so much. So with the collarbone breathing, it's a little like rubbing your tummy and patting your head at first, but once you practice it a little bit, you really kind of will get the hang of it. And so again, we're going to take 2 fingers and we're going to start by putting those 2 fingers over one of the collarbone points. And then we're going to tap right on the back of the hand, right between the pinky and the ring finger and that little indentation. And so we're going to tap there. And then there's a whole breathing sequence, right? So while we're doing this, we're going to breathe all the way in and hold for just a brief second, and then halfway out, and then all the way out, and then halfway in, and then just finish that breath. So breathing in and then out. And then we're going to bend the knuckles. Now this is important. The thumb is a ground, as we said, right? You want to be careful not to put the thumb down, right? If you touch the thumb down and you ground yourself, you have to start over. So we're going to bend the knuckles, and we're going to put those knuckles right over that K27 point, over that collarbone point, not touching the thumb down. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tap on the back of the hand in that little indentation. And we're going to breathe all the way in and then halfway out and then all the way out and then halfway in and then finish the breath all the way in, all the way out. And then same hand, we're going to switch sides. And we're going to do that on the other collarbone point, right? So tapping on that little point again, and we're going to breathe all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in, and then finish the breath. And then we're going to bend the knuckles, and again, not touching the thumb down. We're going to put those knuckles over that collarbone point. And we're going to tap, and we're going to breathe all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in, and finish the breath. And then we're going to switch hands, right? So I'm going to switch hands, and we're going to put the two fingers over one of the collarbone points. And it doesn't matter what order you do these in. It doesn't matter which hand you start with. It doesn't matter which order you use, that you use the points, as long as you do all of them, right? And so again, we're going to tap on the back of the hand between the pinky and the ring finger. And we're going to breathe all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in and finish the breath. And then we're going to bend the knuckles, not touching the thumb down. And we're going to put those over that same collarbone point. And we're going to breathe all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in and finish the breath. And then same hand, we're going to switch sides. I'm going to do the other point. So tapping on the back of the hand between the pinky and the ring finger, all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in and finish the breath. Then we're going to bend the knuckles and put over that collarbone point and tapping and breathe all the way in and halfway out and all the way out and halfway in and finish the breath. And that's it. So both of these are very simple techniques that can be done anytime. Definitely you want to do these daily, but they can be done anytime that you need to calm your central nervous system. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling anxious. Many of my clients have shared with me that when they get in an argument with somebody, with their spouse or with one of their family members, they've actually stopped and said, okay, I'm going to step away for a moment and just find some calm, and then we can talk, right? And that they've stepped away and done the tapping and come back feeling calmer and actually had a conversation. So it can be really useful in the moment when you need it. So I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation on thought field therapy. I hope that you find it useful. And if you have questions, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can always reach out to me. My number here is 972-948-1183. And you can always reach me there. If I don't answer, leave a message. I'm frequently in session with people, but definitely I will give you a call back. Hopefully you find this helpful, and I would love to talk to you. If you would like to just talk to me and ask some questions, I'm more than happy to get on the phone with you and do a complimentary discovery call. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you find this therapy useful.